Folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the Hamas or Islamic protest marches or rallies or whatever you want to call them that are happening in, and I'm thinking about London at the moment, London, England, but happening all over the Western world. It seems to be a very Western world thing. Why is it only in the Western world they want to do these marches? Is it because of the freedoms and the liberties the Western societies offer? I don't know. But let's have a little look at this, because there's a couple of things interest me here. One is the police and the government could easily, effortlessly stop these if they wanted to, but they choose not to, which is surprising. Even when the marches and the gatherings are illegal, blatantly illegal, still the police do nothing. But something that struck me, what was the cost? Who's paying for this? Now, I noticed in quite a few instances, but again, I'll come back to the London one as a sort of, if you like, the benchmark. The majority of the Islamic population in Britain is located about 400 kilometres away from, not all of them, but the majority from London. So, and they're the most activist groups from around there. So around that area, up towards, say, Manchester and Leeds and up around that part of the world. And it's not just people from Gaza. It could be from Pakistan or Bangladesh or anywhere around the Middle East, really. So these are the people. That's where the biggest concentration of people is. So they're busing them in from those areas to London. Now, I looked at the number of buses, the number of people that are supposedly being brought in from these outer areas. Now, there's very high levels of unemployment. So we can assume that these people, unless they're all drug dealers, don't have vehicles, and the cost of petrol in England's pretty high. So I don't imagine they could easily afford the journey. Where would they stay? How would they eat and drink? There's a whole lot of things there. It's an expensive business, bringing in tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people to do marches, rallies and protests and so on. So I looked at the number of people that are coming from the north, and apparently they're being bussed in is certainly how it's been described. Then I looked at the number of buses that would be needed to get that many people, and it's well over 1,000 buses would be needed to do this. And there are various sort of pickup points. So it seems there's facilities to convey people to some central pickup points, around northern England. And then the buses are going to those pickup points, and they'd have to have council permission, because the buses would be, there'd be a long line of buses going around the block, and so they'd need council permission. So there'd need to be a lot of government permission and a lot of assistance, not only at the federal level or hands-off, if not direct assistance, but also at the local government level. There would need to be a lot of collusion, a lot of interaction and organisation with local government. So we're not talking about just sort of the back of an envelope type gig here. We're talking a lot of organisations gone into this. So they're able to. Now, if you look at the price of buses, and they'd be getting these buses at a time of peak hiring rate, when everyone's sort of wanting to hire them. So they'd be up in the expensive slot there. So we'd be talking, serious money, as in, many hundreds, thousands of dollars just to hire the buses. Then they've got to be, registered drivers. There's got to be, you've got to get I think it's diesel fuel for nearly all those buses. So you've got to pay for the fuel sort of there and back, for something that guzzles quite a lot of fuel. Then you get them into London. Now you've got to have parking arranged. Remember, you've got 1,000 fucking buses here. You've got to have parking arranged. So that, again, the London Council has to be bending over backwards to be helping them, when they could just simply refuse parking, but they don't. So they're getting a lot of help there. And then you've got to feed and house these people. Let's assume a number of them are going to stay with I don't know, relatives or friends or other people of Islamic faith. They're going to stay with them, and so maybe they're just boarding with people for a night or two. There's maybe that, but otherwise they're going to have some sort of accommodation, which is expensive. Now, during the rallies and the marches, which go for hours, people are going to need to be fed. They're going to need to be given water. They're going to need to be toilet facilities. Then they're all going to have an area where they go. Their prayer mats are going to have to come along, and they bow to Mecca, and all this sort of stuff. So again, a huge organisational exercise. So given the size of certainly some of the marches that have been recorded in the public domain, the cost of doing those would be several $100,000, and they can mobilise that capital very quickly, and because there's not necessarily a whole lot from the time they decide to do it, from the time they do it, so they must have access to cash funds. This is not something that has to be liquidated over time. They can get their hands on cash money very quickly. Where does that money come from, and in what quantity? So let's say $1 million to do, and I think it's more, but let's just say for the moment $1 million overall cost. And how are they able to get that money so quickly? Where does it come from? Who's paying? These are meant to be a whole lot of unemployed, illiterate people. How are they able to get that money? So someone's paying for it. Now, whoever's paying for it must know the purpose of what the money is being used for, and must, if not directly condone it and support it and want it, must at least not be in disagreement with it. So they're effectively a player, a key pivotal player in this. Now let's go through the whole process of this because I want to highlight how the deep state is, if I can use that in the globalist cabal, the deep state, call it what you like, how they're approving of this. They're not against it. And given how many non-Gentiles are in this group, then they must see that the social discord that it sows overall in Gentile society is a desirable thing, even though it may have in the immediate term undesirable consequences for the chosen ones. So there has to be some sort of a trade-off here where they're thinking, well, we don't like this part of it, but the greater, our greater purpose is being served by allowing this to go ahead and supporting and assisting. Because it's definitely being supported and assisted. It's definitely not being opposed when it could easily be opposed. So we need to consider that in the overall, if you like, the geopolitics of this. Now, just on the, I've noticed there's been, over the years, there's been numerous attempts by white people to get together to say oppose mass migration as a case in point. Now, this is considered to be effectively a crime, and if you even notice that white people are now a minority, then that makes you Hitler, worse than Hitler, double Hitler. When these white groups or people are just citizens of Western countries, which happen to be white, the white bit's sort of incidental to them being citizens of Western countries, those Western countries are targeted by the globalist cabal to be infused with black and brown people. So hence that. So it's nothing to do with being white. It's just that the white countries are targeted by the globalists. That's the issue. So when these white people gather, the police and the security services are all monitoring their emails and their online activity, their texts, and all this is being monitored. And as soon as they attempt to gather or attempt to go down the highway, the police are there to stop the bus or stop the cars or stop the whatever, and to intercept these people, to stop them and disperse them. So they won't even allow them to gather in numbers. They're on the highway waiting. They know the registration numbers of cars and the buses and that sort of thing, and they're onto it. And with great much aggressiveness and a very tight attention to detail and tight 24/7 surveillance, they go after these white groups to stop them from gathering and, again, to force them to disperse under threat of arrest and imprisonment and so on. If they don't agree to this, they're dragged into courts and dealt with very harshly. You fucking damn Nazi! Prison for you Hitler motherfucker. So it's very aggressive policing and very intense policing and over the top, police state type surveillance and action. But that's for white people attempting to gather to complain about mass migration. Now, in the case of these, you've got all these buses gathering. The police know about it, or security services know about it. They would know almost every movement these people are making. They would know where they're congregating, who are the organisers. The police of security services generally would know all of this, and unless they're refusing to even surveil these people, of course. But assuming they are, I can't believe they wouldn't do it. They're doing the surveilling. They're just choosing to not stop them. So they're allowing the whole thing to go ahead. They've got a number of points when they could disperse it or prevent it from occurring. For example, going to the pickup points. Or stopping the buses and going, or intercepting them along the highway, or on the expressways travelling from North England down south to London. There is so many places they could go to intercept them and stop the gathering from going ahead, but they don't. They could just say, look, it's an illegal protest, or illegal gathering. You better go home, you guys, and it should be in. Just prevent the whole thing from happening in the first place. But they don't. Not only do they not do it, they have a completely hands-off thing. They're not even trying to stop it or prevent it or limit it or anything like that at all. They're just letting it go through. Unlike how they would treat other protests where white people were involved. And you sort of get the impression that well-behaved, upstanding, law-abiding white citizens can be strongly and heavily and aggressively policed. But people who are not law-abiding and who don't give a fuck about the laws or about the, abiding by, determinations such as you don't have a permit to do a march and this sort of thing. People that simply don't give it. We observe Islamic law. The lawmakers, the people that we listen to are the imams. We don't listen to the white people. Why should we listen to your laws? We've just come to your country to take what we can, not to integrate or assimilate or abide by your laws or your customs or habits. So you can fuck off, police. And the police are just tamely sort of allowing this, saying, well, if you're not law-abiding, we won't police you. If you are law-abiding, then we will put you in prison. And the insanity of that is beyond belief. That it's the law-abiding ones that get beat up on by the authorities that are meant to be upholding the law but don't and can't and won't. Now, the other thing, so again, the police could stop it and disperse it at any time, but they choose not to. And so it's this very selective policing, which of course has got everyone concerned, me included, and I notice it all the time. Even you notice on little things like, not little things, things like there's a break-in and robbery and the person is caught in the act by the homeowner or the house owner, and there's a struggle and there's an assault, so the person gets away. Police don't really care. Can you drop by the station when you've got time and we'll think about it. But someone calls up and says, I'm half black and this white guy has called me a slur. Then 2 carloads of police are around there in seconds. So this type of selective policing. Where one, they barely give a shit, and the other, it's a fucking emergency, and they're all over it. Whereas one is quite a serious thing, and the other is not. But there you go. Now the third, the next thing, sort of in this jigsaw that I wanted to point out is that all across the Western world, again, when you see white people protesting, the government will aggressively go after bank accounts and will ensure that people are debanked. That they can't access funds, their funds are frozen, so they'll cut off the supply of money as a way of choking off the protest or the gathering or the march or whatever it is, if there's white people involved. But in this case, where the money is absolutely vital, absolutely pivotal, when you're hiring 1,000 fucking buses and you're busing that many people into the city, you need a lot of money, you need it quickly. And so if they choked off the money, if the government debanked these, Palestinian protest marches with the same aggressiveness and the same thoroughness that they do when white people do a protest, then they could stop the whole march dead in its tracks. Just debanked, your funds are frozen, you're an illegal, terrorist group or whatever, or whatever they want to designate them as. I think it is a terrorist group, Hamas, actually. And they could choke off all the funds. If they try and move to another bank, again, the intense surveillance that white people are subject to, the white people that oppose mass migration, could be applied here if they go to another bank to try and source funds, close that down, and so on. So if they wanted to do it, they could. For some reason, they don't. Again, they're just letting it go through. They're allowing these people to access as much cash and money and resources as they need to put these marches and so on together. And again, they could easily stop that. If you can't get your 1,000 buses on the road, from North England to London, if you can't get your buses on the road because you can't afford them, because you can't pay for them because your bank account's been frozen or debanked entirely, then again the protest couldn't go ahead, or it'd be small and paltry and these sorts of things. But again, the authorities don't do that. It's something they could do, but they don't. But just reverse the situation and say, well, this is a bunch of white people protesting about, I don't know, LGBTQ in schools, or about the mass migration, or counter protesting climate change activists, these sorts of things. Then the government would move aggressively against those white people. But they don't here. So then again, we see this two-tier policing. Now, the other thing is that gets brought, the final thing I raise is brought up, is that the authorities say, well, look, there's a lot of Muslims, or a lot of Hamas, or a lot of Palestinians, or even Muslims sympathetic with the Palestinian situation, that want to march, or have been encouraged, or even strong-armed, I'm sure in some cases, to go to these marches and protests. And so there's so many of them that we couldn't possibly handle a protest that big. The police, couldn't possibly handle a protest that big. And therefore, we should do nothing. We should just allow it to go ahead. But when it's a big protest with white people, they seem to have no problem in going in and arresting people. No problem at all. They're quite happy to do that. But for some reason, in this instance, they're not happy to do it, or refuse to do it. And again, it's in the globalist interest to have these things go ahead, because it creates this situation of reducing social trust, societal conflict, the racial conflict, brown, white conflict. It creates the sort of conflict that the globalists want and need in order to push ahead with the globalist project. So they're thoroughly approving this. Now, it is that they have to put up with some unfortunate slurs and racist attitudes against their chosen ones. But that's just like a byproduct. We'll just take that as a bit of a collateral damage, and hey, so what? Because overall, we're going to sort of remove the Gentiles, the rich white, Christian Gentiles, from the world chessboard, and that's our objective. So we'll just take a few casualties now, but push on with the project that is so dear to our hearts. So that's the situation as I see it. My view is that if the authorities wanted to stop it, they could. They won't, and effectively refuse to. Well, not only refuse to, they actually want this sort of thing to go ahead. It suits the globalist cabal I'm talking about. It suits their purpose, and they are, I think, quietly celebrating in background. Quietly celebrating this whole thing as being, wow. This is a huge step forward for the globalist project. So that's my view. That's my opinion. You've been with Tassus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.